And it kind of relates to what we were saying, like right out there before. It's like, when someone comes up to me and asks me, hey, like, I've been in TradFi for 5 years, like,
Mm.
in this role, how much can I make if I go into crypto? Like,
Yeah,
you're asking the wrong questions,
that's the wrong
bro. You're
question.
doing it wrong. You know what I
Right,
mean?
100%.
And it speaks to the same thing. So,
It's also, I mean, it's a startup. It's startup culture, right? So it's also like, I mean, nobody wants to talk to you about how much you can get paid. They want to know what value you bring to the
facts.
table, and we're going
Facts.
to compensate you accordingly.
Big facts.
Like that's like, I mean,
Big
come
facts.
on, that's just 101 right there.
So why don't we go back and why don't you tell me like how you made the transition? Like what was your point of entry? What was your point of curiosity? Where did you start?
Yeah, absolutely. It was back in college for me. So back in school, this is probably 2017.
Where'd you go to school?
A school called Elon University down in North Carolina. So I was there. I was studying finance. And for me, I was always like looking for new things that I was interested in, and eventually it landed on on Bitcoin, and I started like exploring this thing. I read the white paper, I dove down into it, and next thing I knew, it was my senior year of college, and a buddy of mine, he and I started like building these rigs to mine Bitcoin.
Oh
So
no way.
in an office space, like 10, 15 minutes off campus, we built a bunch of computers and just got them all kind of
Amazing.
working and mining Bitcoin. And at the time it was Zcash. And just really just trying to, figure out how all of this worked. Right. So that was my first kind of introduction to proof of work, algorithms and how everything kind of worked. So, but that for me was like, initially I was like, this is so interesting, but like, where is there an opportunity for me to work? And there really wasn't one. Like, and as I kind of further explored, like, it was so much risk in actually trying to work for a crypto company at that point in time. This is 2018, 2019. I was like, there's no way that's for me. So I left, I graduated school, moved to New York and worked for a company called FactSet,
Mm-hmm.
Bloomberg competitor, and was there for a number of years. But throughout that period of time, I tried for a lot of things. I went for investment banking. I went for my CFA. I interviewed with other data companies. I was always interested in crypto, but still thought that it was too risky. And then finally, 2020 comes around, everyone goes home, offices shut down, like everyone's working from home, whatever. And I'm like, it's finally time for me to pick a lane and like really dive into something, because I really just I wasn't fulfilled in my current in my role at that time. So I was looking for something more entrepreneurial and something that would be more of a mission for me. So it was March of 2020, and I think I set
And
my
you were
first.
selling FactSet's product to institutions already.
Yeah, so I was in consulting and sales, so
Got it.
working primarily with some very large financial institutions, really to help them use our product,
Got
right?
it. Got it.
So that was a big part of that. But yeah, and then March of 2020 came around, and I sent my first kind of blind outreach LinkedIn message to a person who worked at Tacit at the time, which is it was I believe it was a company that offered Bitcoin swaps
Mhm.
at the time, and he's since become a very good contact of mine. But that just led to so many different conversations that I started having from all this outreach that I was doing, and eventually started working for companies for free, really to try and get experience on my resume. Because as I looked at my resume, I was like, who's going to hire
What
somebody who
kind of
doesn't
stuff were
have.
you doing in these free projects?
Yeah, so the first company I worked for was called Bitcoin Point. It was a London-based Bitcoin ATM company. And
Wow.
they called me their data officer, and I did a lot of work with them, really just looking at. So we were basically trying to do a lot of KYC to figure out who are the people that are basically using these ATMs and doing a lot of KYC on them. So I would handle a lot of that process. And that was kind of my first step, and then my second step was I worked with another company called Eterna Capital, is a venture capital firm based out of London, and they ran an accelerator program for builders on Algorand, so the Algorand blockchain.
Algorand, sure, sure.
So I did all the BD for that, did a lot of outreach, recruited a number of projects to come and build on Algorand, and then ran that whole process.
Now you met these guys through the first person that you messaged on LinkedIn, and he just kind of fanned you out,
It
or
was so no, that was just the first message that I
okay,
sent, but then just through that effort, connected with a bunch of different people who, eventually found people that were looking for
got
just
it.
people to help out and work. And like that for me was like a fantastic opportunity for me to do that on top of a full-time job. So I was like, you know what, I have my job that I do every day. I'll do that. And then, on the side, we'll start to gain some more experience in this space, because I really see myself, having an opportunity to expand it and do all of that. So, I did that for the better part of 6 to 9 months, probably just going into 2021. And then January of 2021 is when I really started interviewing hard. I think I interviewed with over 30 companies.
Wow.
I had this focus on market making. I think that market makers are just like the coolest companies.
I was going to ask you how you filtered out your search in the beginning of like where you were looking. I think that's a really important point to highlight, is that so you had general curiosity while you were in college, and it led you to do the mining rig, right? Mm-hmm. And then you it didn't stop there. You took it a step further. Like, you found a specific niche that interests you, and you actually zoned in and paid attention
100%.
to that niche. I think that's the piece that gets so overlooked, and that, you know, people out there, they don't understand. Like, that's the important part.
100%.
Now, big question. You just mentioned Josh. How long did it take you from when you took your first project, from that first LinkedIn message, to meeting Josh? Because I think, and tell me how long you thought it would take before you
How long do you think it took?
Good question. My guess is no more than 3 months.
Better part of a year and a half.
Really?
Better part of a year.
A year and a half doing those side projects.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, initially I was very dead set on trying to work for a market maker or an exchange, but really the opportunity that presented itself, which I think this ended up being a very good thing for me, was a product very similar to the company, you know, to the product that the company I had worked for previously offered, but this was in the crypto space, and that's how I ended up at the tie. But funny enough, like, it was 2018 when I first started working at FactSet. I actually pitched like crypto data like integration like into FactSet, and it actually got pretty high up the chain. Like, I talked to some pretty senior people at FactSet in my first 6 months at the firm. Like, again, this is a 10,000 person company.
Right.
Like,
that's awesome.
Not very easy as a new, you know, hire at a company to shake things up and whatever. But I pitched that back in the day, and that nothing really ever came of it. But then I met Josh Frank, who said, you know, we were at, it was a Monday night, and I was at, there was a girl who lives in my building down in FiDi in New York, and I just was over at her apartment. She had a couple friends over, and this guy's sitting on the couch, and naturally, if you talk to me, like, crypto will come out in some way or another, if there's any logical path to get there.
I hate that. I'm that
find
guy
it.
too.
Like,
there.
yeah, it's just, it comes out, man. Like, if, like, it happens. But we just started talking, and he was like, yeah, like, I actually founded like a crypto data company, and I'm like, oh, is it like, you know, it's like Masari. He's like, no. I'm like, is it Dune Analytics? He's like, no. I was like, we're bigger than all of them. Who are you? He's like, we're the tie. I was like, I've never heard of you. But then, yeah, we started talking. I got his info, and that was on a Monday. I'm pretty sure I went on a walk with him in Union Square that Thursday, which served as like my interview with him. Mm. He passed me along to the other co-founder, Ben, who I think I interviewed with Friday. And I'm pretty sure by like that Saturday, I had like an offer letter like in my inbox with everything that I had asked for to become the first salesperson at the tie.
Incredible.
And I've been there for about a year. And yeah.
Incredible. So, all right, cool. So in the early days of the tie, so you had experience already from FactSet. You were dealing with the same type of clients that you would now be engaging with at the tie. Is that correct?
More or less.
Okay. So you at least knew that personality type and how to engage with them, but you hadn't established yourself at all in crypto. So, like, at this point, you're coming. No, so in your side projects, did you had you built a strong network already, or you had just kind of gotten your foot?
That's funny, yeah. So I had. So it's funny because when Josh and I first kind of went on our initial interview, where he was like trying to figure out who I was and how I fit into the equation, like, one of the things that I remember being a really like key point for us was just like we knew so many of the same people, and that for him was like, you don't work in crypto, like, how do you like know all these people? And it was like, because I networked my ass off for like a long time to like try and meet all these people and understand.
And so most of these people that you had in common, are these people that you were reaching out to for jobs at first?
People that I was reaching out to for jobs, but it wasn't like when I reach out to people, especially like initially, it wasn't like I was just reaching out for a job.
Right.
I was reaching out to figure out what you did.
Facts.
What do you do? And how can I use my skill set? Like, number one, what do you do? Because you might do something that has absolutely no upward trajectory at all. Mm-hmm. And I, as somebody who wants to work at a startup, should be able to evaluate a company to be able to say if like, hey, this is something that could potentially work, or like, hey, I actually think this is like complete bullshit. I don't care. And that for me was like, you know, let's start by having that conversation. Like, I'm not going to come to you for a job. I'm going to come to you to figure out what you do. And like, let's talk about it. And like, let's talk about ways that maybe we can partner together. And that's still the same thing that I do today, like with all my relationships.
It's one thing to ask for a job, and then it's a completely separate thing to to ask, I want to understand what you do and how I can help.
Right.
That's almost the same thing, just in a much better, it's a much better way to ask.
But it's also, I mean, as somebody who's looking to hire people, like, you would rather prioritize someone who is looking to deliver value and in you know, basically in return for, you know, obviously a paycheck, as opposed to somebody who's just like looking to get paid to do work. Like, that's a 9 to 5. Like, crypto, if you want to work a 9 to 5, crypto's not for you. If you want a mission where you wake up every day and you want to deliver and you want ownership in your company, you want equity in your company, or you want tokens from the project that you're working with that will appreciate in value should you deliver on, you know, the should you deliver well on what you are trying to do, then, like, yeah, that's startups. That's also a big part of crypto. Like, you know, and that's not for people that just want to, you know, punch a clock and get a job done.